Hello and welcome. We start with the growing diplomatic row between Britain and China over China's treatment of its ethnic Uighur minority. Days after Britain joined several other nations in putting restrictions on China, individual British MPs and other organisations have been hit by sanctions from China. Well, the row has arisen over allegations that Beijing has forced 1 million ethnic Uyghurs into labour camps, something which China denies. Xinjiang lies in the northwest of China. The region is autonomous, meaning it should have some powers of self-governance, but in practice it faces major restrictions by the central government. Uyghurs living in the region speak their own language and see themselves as culturally and ethnically close to Central Asian nations. China has detained Uyghurs at camps where allegations of torture, forced labour and sexual abuse have emerged. The British Prime Minister Boris Johnson has said MPs and other British citizens sanctioned by China today are performing a vital role in shining a light on the gross human rights violations being perpetrated against Uighur Muslims. China's acting ambassador to Britain has said human rights in Xinjiang cannot be defined by a few satellite images, and it is also unfair to the 25 million people living in the region.
The human rights in Xinjiang cannot be defined by a few satellite images, fake reports, cobbled together by people thousands of miles away, or the performance by anti-China actors or actresses. This is unfair to 25 million people living in the region, and also unfair to all the 1.4 billion Chinese people.
Well, Beijing's new anti-British sanctions apply to 9 individuals and 4 organisations, including illegal chambers. Here's Conservative MP Nusrat Ghani, who's one of the people that has just been sanctioned by China. She told me how she found out about it.
I got a call quite early this morning from friends and family who had obviously seen it on the newswire. I wasn't aware of it before then. I was a little bit surprised to know that the UK government had put sanctions in place just on Monday against Chinese officials who are seen to be complicit in the abuse of the Uyghur. That's 2 million Uyghur people kept in prison camps as modern-day slaves. So one would assume that maybe they were going to retaliate with sanctions against the executive, for example, ministers and officials, but instead they've gone for backbench members of parliament who have just, on the evidence that they have found and seen, have spoken about the plight of the Uyghur.
Do you know how this sanctions process is going to affect you?
I don't have any more detail. I mean, the sanction statement states that I can't visit Hong Kong or China and that my assets will be frozen. Apparently, Chinese people aren't allowed to work with me, nor are companies that are Chinese either. I'm not sure how they're going to make that work, considering my job as an MP means I work with lots of other people. But regardless of whatever the sanction means to me, it is nothing in comparison to the mass abuse of the Uyghur. And if I have an opportunity just to mention, one of the things I've spoken about quite a bit in Parliament is the forced sterilisation of Uyghur women, to the point where there's been an 84% drop in the Uyghur women in the birth rate. And that is a clear marker of genocide. So this has just given me and my colleagues another opportunity to talk about the plight of the Uyghur and the mass abuse taking place in Xinjiang.
There has been much international condemnation and concern raised about what is happening there, including BBC reports. We're seeing some images now highlighting this whole set of concerns. I just wondered, though, in terms of your own personal work and your own family, are you worried that you're now going to face difficulty in terms of who you deal with commercial relationships, that this could spiral upwards and put a lot of pressure on you?
My job as a Member of Parliament is to work with many different types of people. I'm not sure what sort of impact it will have on me here in the UK or the work of Westminster. I think what it does do is put out sort of an intimidation of members of Parliament to try and put them under pressure not to talk about what's happening in Xinjiang. And I think that is the big issue we need to deal with internationally. How democracies deal with political interference when they want to undermine the work that's taken up by elected officials. As a Member of Parliament, it's my job to talk about human rights abuses around the world, especially when they impact us via a supply chain. And when a select committee report, like the one I sit on, the Business Select Committee report, produces a report based on the evidence and that can identify abuse taking place in Xinjiang, when the Chinese government says that is a report made of lies, it's also undermined the work of the Select Committee and therefore the House of Commons itself.
You're a Conservative MP. The Conservatives have been in government in this country for 10 years. David Cameron and George Osborne, when they were in charge, were seen as cozying up to China. Have the Conservatives got it wrong on China systematically now for several years? Because, of course, it is a global superpower and it's going to be difficult for a small group of MPs in the UK to fight them unilaterally.
Well, first of all, this isn't about just a small group of MPs. There's a number of us parliamentarians working on this very issue in the UK, and the UK government itself is the one that's put sanctions in place. And UK members of parliament are working with parliamentarians around the world. The American government has already declared a genocide against the Uyghur by the hands of the Chinese state. So this isn't work that's just been done here in the UK. This is less about the Conservative Party, but more about the state of the Chinese government and the fact they've got a hard line Chinese government in place at the moment that has no truck with any of our values or international laws whatsoever. And we must be absolutely grounded in how we respond to China when it tries to undermine our democracies here in the UK.
So do you think that Boris Johnson, the British Prime Minister, should go further? What further actions would you like to see the UK take now?
Well, the Prime Minister's put out a really stellar tweet this morning saying that I'm just looking at the words again, he stands firmly with colleagues who are talking out on human rights abuses.
Is a tweet enough?
Well, no, but we've got meetings taking place throughout the day. We've already had sanctions in place. I would like to see those sanctions extended to more Chinese officials who are complicit in the abuse in Xinjiang. I would also like to see, have our investment also considered if there are further investments into China to make sure it is in no way linked to the Xinjiang region, so we're not complicit in any abuse of the Uyghur. What today has done, apart from raise the profile of foreign interference into democracies and the work that MPs do in Parliament, but also it's enabled us to speak once again of the plight of the Uyghur. And if the Chinese state thought they were closing that conversation down, all they've done is opened it up to a bigger audience.